Welcome back to church. Thank you for tuning in. We're so excited that you're here. We're in the second installment of the 5 Fs. I mean, we started off with friendship, and today we're on F number 2. And what we're talking about is finance. I know what you're thinking.
Bum, bum, bum.
Sit back, relax, right? Relax, Open your mind and your heart, because I believe God has something for you. We have approached this particular podcast with prayer. We've approached it with you in mind. God's done some amazing things in our life through finances. And I'm gonna tell you, we're real people. I mean, we gotta between us, we have a bunch of kids, and so money is important. It's not more important than our God, right? But we're gonna touch on some of the important things about finances, how we operate through finances, and I'm really excited for Jason to open up our world and our mind to something that really has revolutionized his life. And spoiler, it might be Bitcoin. We're just gonna, throw that out there.
You never know.
But we're so excited for this podcast, man. Jason, how you feeling today, man?
I feel great. I am excited to share whatever knowledge that I can, as humbly as I can. So I think the only asterisk I would put on the episode would be keep an open mind, guys, because I think this one will challenge people more than some of the others. And that's what I'm actually excited for, is hopefully even if just one person can realize the value of whether it's tithing, whether it's lack of anxiety over your finances, or it's this new technology called Bitcoin. You're going to hear about it a lot. We could have buried the lead and kind of like tricked you into listening to it, right? But I think it's just, we want to be open and honest right away.
Yeah.
And I know, Warren, you and I, we believe in the power of finances.
Come on.
But not the priority.
Come on.
To us, the priority is God. And then he is going to manage the finances with you as a steward, right?
Absolutely.
He's going to put it on your heart where those go. So
absolutely.
I'm gonna let you kick it off. How do you think finances and just financial thinking, how have they kind of like molded you into who you are? What was that like for you as a young man? How have finances impacted your life?
So for me, my origin story is I was a son to a great man. I mean, my father was the first person in our family to go to college and graduate. And he went on to be a NASA engineer. He worked at Boeing for a while, and he ended up having a great career with a Shell Oil, a petroleum company. And he was also a pastor. And so I grew up upper middle class, in the suburbs of Houston, Texas. And I remember we were like the only people on our street with 4 cars. And back in the, in the late 80s and the early 90s, to have 4 cars was like, that was the thing. And my grandfather built an amazing company in Louisiana. And so I grew up where money was, there was some big earners, and money was just a thing. We had quite a bit. We were blessed. But I've also got to experience in my young life how money can quickly just go away. Being financially savvy and earning a lot does not mean that your family is prepared for the loss of that earner. And in my case, my dad was the breadwinner. My mom was a homemaker, and my dad died when I was 15. He had insurance policies set up, and he had left a tremendous inheritance of land and property. And there was enough money. The problem was the people who was left to, they were not financially savvy. And so when you give money to people who are not used to managing money goes away quickly. And so my dad died at 15. And by the time I was 16, we were dead broke. And the ideas of just paying the house off or putting money in a trust or for tomorrow, those ideas didn't come. And I think that my mom and other people, they're pacifying their grief with material things. And we ended up in a pretty bad situation. And so I ended up actually dropping out of high school to help take care of my mother and my brothers to work full time. And so I learned quickly the power of money. And when I was growing up, it wasn't even a thing. Like when I didn't even know that lights could get cut off until my dad passed away. Right. I didn't even know that, you know, having a grocery budget was a thing. It was just, there was always food. There was always an abundance. And then there wasn't. And so I learned quickly how to manage money, how precious it was. When you spend some hungry nights and some nights in the cold, you realize that being a good steward of your finances is very important. So for me, that's kind of my origin story. And so as I became an earner in my life, I was most of all just grateful to have what God had given me. And so that's given me a lane to kind of have a great appreciation of what God has given me and be generous, because I know how it is to be on the side of not having. And I know what it's like to be hungry. And so when I see people in need, my heart, I have a very generous heart. So I believe in tithing. I believe in generosity. And so throughout the years, I think I probably could have saved a good portion more of the money that I've earned over the years. But the better thing that I did was invest in the kingdom of God and invest in people. And God has always taken care of me. So that's my approach. I try to make the best financial decisions for my family. And I live my life with the open hand. I'm not afraid of losing what I have because I know God can give me more. I've experienced it in my life. I've been from like, what is money, to like, ooh, we have no money, to like, God brings it all back. And so full circle, money does not faze me, either with it or without it. I understand that God's in complete control, but it is important to have a system in your life, tools in your life, to guide that future, because I don't think anybody wants to torpedo their family or find themselves in a situation they could avoid, not having the information that they need to be successful in their finances. So this kind of give you kind of a background with me, Jason. How did you kind of establish your relationship with finances?
So for me, I had parents kind of in the similar way that your dad provided. I had a mom and dad who worked. My mom actually didn't for a few years there. Mm-hmm. Early elementary school, kind of kindergarten, she had stopped working and then returned back to the workforce. But just like with your dad, good stewards of their money, made quite a bit, probably upper middle class. Mm-hmm. Though it's interesting to think about, when you're in it, you don't know that's what that means. Yeah. Like sometimes when you're young, you just don't realize the impact that the money has. Like what you're talking about with your dad. I was the same way. Like I was, maybe a little selfish with my money and didn't really appreciate it because, it just always came. Mm-hmm. And I am grateful that we never had a season where it just wasn't there. But then as I got older, one thing my parents really pushed was be aware of a budget and the money you're earning. So there was a time where I was going to get a car when it was time for me to drive. Well, my parents set up a system where they said, you can match anything that you want. We'll give you a certain amount of money. And then you can match it if you want a better car. Like anything you want to add on top of it, you can do that. And so there were things like that in my life where my parents didn't want me to take it for granted. And I do the same thing with my kids is God has really blessed the stewardship that my wife and I have put into our money, and the hard work that we have both put in, both in budgeting and then in maintaining a good rapport in the workplace so you can get those kind of promotions or financial enhancements, whatever those look like, bonuses, things like that. And I would say that's the thing I draw from your story, Warren, is that being a good steward and being responsible and budgeting and tithing, these things that, Jesus talks about money a ton in the Bible. It's the thing he hits on most, because it is so influential in our lives. And I think that's the key is God will bless it, but we need to be good stewards. We need to budget. We need to be aware of where our money's going and why it's going there. Absolutely. One thing I think generationally, culturally, and maybe across all generations, let's be fair, but especially this generation with the internet and the speed at which we're able to receive things and view things. One thing I've seen over and over again as a professor and just in my life interacting with people my age and younger is this real, the challenge, I would say, of delayed gratification.
Ooh.
So are you willing to put off the gratification, the reward of your finances until a time where those finances have increased? Are you willing to sow and then reap later?
Yeah.
And I think culturally, the world is telling us right now, make money fast, make money any way that you can. And I just want to say to those people listening that think those are true things and that that's how you succeed, you can get rich, but that doesn't make you wealthy. And I got to tell you, if you get rich doing something that makes you bankrupt spiritually, if you have an OnlyFans right now, Jesus loves you just like he loves me. I'm no better than you, but I would say give it some time and consider whether that OnlyFans is worth the cost. Whatever you're doing that's making money, quote unquote, the wrong way, illegally, whatever those things are, think about that. Give yourself some time, maybe even pray about that. If you feel convicted, like that's one of the things I want to make sure we hit on this episode is there are a lot of ways to get finances. And I think I'm so grateful that I have examples in my life that have showed me how to delay a little bit of gratification, continue to work hard while the other money stacks up. And so culturally, that's what I hope for everyone is that if you do have a history of kind of a lack of financial awareness in your family, you be the change.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge of that, and I understand what I'm asking, is that I guess if we had to, I don't know, I've never even said this out loud before. If I had to put a label on it, I suppose I am second or third generation money.
Okay.
And I don't really think of it in those terms, but if I don't think of it in those terms, I'm not appreciating the reward of the hard work of my grandfather and my grandparents on both sides. So interestingly, both of my sets of grandparents came from both the 757, but the grandfather's coming from North Carolina. I had a grandfather who was a farmer's son, and back then farming wasn't like, and I'm not even saying it's a huge industry now, but back then it was like you subsisted off of what you made, right? You just ate the food you grew and you sold a little bit of it. And my grandfather had to warm up the water he bathed in with a fire. Like he actually had to warm the water. If he wanted soap, they made it out of animal fat. So there were a lot of days without soap, but it didn't matter because you wake up, you work on the farm again. In fact, back then, my grandfather on my Curtis Barber, who was my grandfather on my mother's side, they were so impoverished that he got a partial scholarship to play basketball at NC State because he was playing well in high school, and he had to turn it down because his father, my great grandfather, asked him to stay on the farm and help work it. So there were all these things that you would say, well, Jason, maybe you do well with money because of your family having money before. Absolutely. But the only reason that my family had money before is because we had good stewards. So what I would say is be a good steward no matter which generation you are. So because my grandfather worked hard at Sears when Sears was a big deal.
Yeah. Let's go Sears.
He was a manager. Oh yeah. He was a manager at Sears. He got stock. I think this was 1983 that he retired. So I wasn't even born yet, actually. He got stock and he didn't really know what it was. So in his mind, it's like, do you spend this at the register? Do you turn in this piece of paper at the bank and then kind of cash that out? Like, what can I trade this for? And so then he had a friend who explained it to him. And so he had like a base level understanding once he spoke to his friend about stocks. But what he decided to do was dive in. Like, I'm going to research it. I'm going to understand where my money is. Well, my grandfather on the other side, with my dad's side, same thing. Retired from the shipyard, had some stock and like a 401k, didn't really understand what that meant, and then got with a financial planner. And so what happened was we began as a family, I'm thankful for my grandparents, they began a legacy of let's build the wealth that we got. Let's not spend it all. So then as my parents came into the picture, they had enough financial security that they could go reach for the jobs that they wanted. They could go to school, right?
Okay.
And that is the benefit, by the way, of breaking those kind of financial generational challenges or curses, or however you want to look at it, is that it allows the next generation to dream a little bigger.
Yep.
You know, there's a hierarchy of needs called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you fulfill, it looks like kind of a pyramid. And if you take care of the first base layer of needs, food, water, shelter, then you can start going into the next layer, which the upper layers, and I don't want to get them out of order, but the upper layers become building relationships.
Okay.
And then dreaming, imagination, you know, things that once your base layer needs as a human are taken care of, you can start doing these bigger things. And so I'm thankful to have had grandparents that took care of those base layers so that my parents could dream. And then now it's allowed me to dream a little bigger. And so what I want to do is be a good steward of that in terms of investment and continuing to work hard and make my own money so that we don't have to live off of this investment. So then my kids will be able to dream even bigger, so on and so forth.
That's good.
So that's kind of my history with money.
That's what's up.
Let me be clear though. I wasn't great about budgeting because I did take it for granted. So that's something I've had to learn is keeping a budget, being responsible, not buying everything that you want as soon as you want it. Because when you go from being able to have whatever you want, and then now it's your money, so you're trying to live off of less because you're starting your career out again, there are ways to do that. And some of those ways are delaying gratification and being responsible with what you intake. Do not output more than you intake. So anyways, I don't want to paint it like financial guru here that never made mistakes. No. I bought too many pairs of shoes and went to too many movies with too big a popcorn growing up that I should have just pocketed and saved and built up more wealth. But instead I was rich. Every night that I waited tables and I left with, $200 worth of tips, right into some Nikes, man. I was rich in Nikes. I was rich in, Honda Civic stuff.
Okay.
But it wasn't wealth.
I feel you.
So that's some of my story.
I feel you. So we touched on, we had some big pieces there. I want to go back to a piece that not everybody may understand, right? So we talked a little bit about tithing, right? And so this is a topic, right? That new believers, even old believers, it just seems to be controversial throughout the body of Christ. It's pretty cut and dry, but it seems to be controversial. And I'll tell you why, because I'm just gonna be honest with you. We're real people. I'm a minister, and I can tell you that if you turn on Christian television or if you attend church, you're going to hear about money every Sunday, all the time. It's going to be there. And you'd be like, well, why? Well, I'll tell you. It's because money can be the root of all evil. It can. And I'm not telling you that tithes is evil. I'm going to tell you that the prosperity gospel is a gospel that is not correct. Right? There's not a God in heaven that's a fairy godmother, fairy godfather who just wants to shower down blessings upon you just because he wants to bless you. Does God want you to have good things? Does he want you to have an abundance? Yes, but that's not his main goal for your life. You were created for his glory and his purpose. God, he does not focus on your bottom line, right? And he often allows our bottom line to fluctuate to remind us that he's God and our stuff and our securities are not, right? And so we don't give to God to get. I'll tell you, there were periods in my life where I was doing well and I wasn't tithing. To be honest, there are periods in my life where I had experienced blessings just were running me down, and I was not being as generous as I was supposed to. That's real. That's just. And I grew up in the church and I was taught to tithe. And when I became a young man, and especially when we fell on hard times, like when we had no food, right? When we had no food, I was not working my minimum wage job and then taking 10% of that and giving it to the church. I could barely keep the lights on. I'm just going to give it to you real, because you're going to hear all kind of stories. You're going to hear all kind of examples through church that tells you to give and God will take care of the rest. I want you to pepper that with the discernment of God, because I also believe that God does not bless you, or he does not take care of you based upon your obedience to him. If that was the case, we wouldn't be saved. He died for us when we were in our sin. Okay. So what tithing does for your life, it's a way of worship, saying, God, you're first place in my life. You're my beginning. I give you the first of what you've given me. I recognize that all that I have comes from you. There are people out there in this world that God's taking care of. They're not tithing.
Yeah.
They're not tithing, and they're not broke. There's some billionaires out there that are tithing and they're not broke. It's not a 1-for-1, but let me tell you, my life is so filled with peace, joy, and security because I put God first place. So the one thing you can count on is when you put God first and you give him the 10% of everything you have, man, it's like God gives you something that's not tangible. It's not like, oh, I can see it when I click on my bank account. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes it happens without tithing. What you get through tithing is the peace to know that God's the one guiding your finances, not me. You see, when I wasn't giving God, when I wasn't tithing, there was always something on the inside of me because I knew about being generous to God. I knew about putting him first. There was always something on the inside of me like, man, this can blow up any day. I can lose this job any day. I can go check my bank account. It could be empty. I feel like I'm not protected. I was always checking, whatever I was into, stocks, whatever I was doing. I was always on edge about, is it going to disappear? Is it going to, I got to make sure I have enough. I got to have 6 months of income in the bank. I got to do this. I got to do this. I always had this checklist that I had to do because I didn't have a peace about my finances.
Yeah.
Just didn't have peace. And today, as a faithful tither and a faithful giver to the local church, and it's the way I give back to God, I have a peace. I don't have to check. I know. I know because I've put God first. And even if it gets tight, he operates in tight. He gives me peace throughout all situations. And so I don't want you to think that we're telling you that if you're not tithing, that you won't have money. It's just not true. I've lived a life where I didn't tithe and I had money. It just wasn't peaceful money. It just wasn't. And I had, emergency fund and all this stuff. And there was just something in me that just couldn't, it wasn't enough. I never had enough to be comfortable. Now it doesn't matter what I have. I'm comfortable in all positions because I'm connected to the creator of the universe. So I just want to leave you with that because I don't want you to be like, oh my, tithing is the key to financial prosperity. There are people out there with financial prosperity who do not tithe. That's just not true, right? It's not true that if you have money, if you have millions of dollars, oh, you must be doing the right thing by putting God first. Not true. Just not true, right?
Yeah.
What God gives you through finances is something way better than the world can ever give you, right? Like you can buy a gun for protection, but you can't buy safety.
That's real.
Right? You can have the best, you can buy the best healthcare and have the best doctors, but you can't purchase health. That only and we all are down here with an unlimited amount of time. We don't get any more. Nothing that you can earn or buy can give you more time. So don't wrap your life around how much you earn or how much you can keep, or it's important to have these things in your life, but you have to balance them with your trust and your faith and your belief in God. That's real. I've learned that my life just works better when I put God first, right? And he's such a good God that even when I don't put him first, he still takes care of me. He still takes care of me, but the Holy Spirit always corrects me. And he's like, hey, you're not in line. Hey, you're not, that nagging feeling. If you remember being a kid, if you're a person who grew up with parents who were strict and you know there was something that was hanging over your head that you hadn't done that you were supposed to do, and you kept putting it off and you're like, I know I need to get this done. Right?
Yeah.
That's how living your life without God is. I know there's just something missing. There's something I haven't done. Yeah, you haven't put the master of the universe first place in your life. And that's what being generous to God is about. That's what being obedient to his word. Tithing is biblical. We stand on the principle. It's not a give and get. God's given us everything. So there's no more for him to give us. What we get from him by trusting him, putting him first, is the peace of knowing that he's going to take care of our affairs. And the things that we do, he blesses them beyond we can ever imagine. And so it goes beyond what we can describe to you. Like, why do you tithe? Why? That seems like if you just put that 10% in a fund somewhere, that you can just grow millions of dollars. And some people do that. Right.
Yep.
But I'd rather. Go ahead.
Go. No. I want you to hit the points you need.
Sorry, I'm flowing. Go. But I'd rather be obedient to God, right? Because funds go up and down. Even banks collapse. Money loses its value.
Very true.
Right? But God, he never fails. He's the only thing that you can depend on in this life. The Bible tells us that he never changes. Everything else does. He never changes. And so at the beginning of my financial plan, whatever I do with my life, I put God first, and the rest, right? The rest I use godly wisdom to navigate life through. And that's why tithing is so vital and so important. I don't want to tell you, hey, here's your financial plan. Tithe and a window will just bust open, because it may. If that's God's will for your life, it will. But sometimes it doesn't work like that, right? Sometimes God uses our struggles to strengthen our faith, right? And you can't give your way out of that. You can't buy your way out of that. If that's God's will for your life in that period, you will go through it. And there's nothing that you can do to redirect that, right? So just kind of want to put that out there. Jason, how do you feel about that particular piece right there?
I love it. I think nice
hit by the mic here.
Yeah. Mike's moving. Come on, man.
I love
it. No, we're good. We're out here. I think that there's a saying, right, that everybody's heard, or most people have heard. Money can't buy happiness.
Come on.
I always think that's interesting, though, because I would add one word to that phrase to make it true. Because I think money can buy happiness, but that happiness is temporary.
Come on.
Right? You get that thing you want. There can be a rush there, man. I get that pair of shoes I've been looking for.
Yep.
I get that car that I knew I was going to get at 40, or when I retired, or that, all of a sudden you got a Corvette. I think there are ways that we can make ourselves temporarily happy. Money's not going to buy true happiness.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to be fulfilling. It's not going to be the thing that defines your life. And I have known wealthy people that are miserable and need advice. And I've known broke people that I want to listen to for advice on how to have joy.
Come on.
So money's not going to bring peace.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Is money is great for taking care of our families. It's great for handling the things on earth we need to handle. And I think God does want us to be good stewards of those things. Yeah. So you can't tithe what you don't have. So in my opinion, if you're paying your bills and paying your debts, like the Bible talks about, you are a slave to your debtors. So pay your debts. Like, be generous when God allows you to give generously. But don't be extravagant. And I think sometimes even there are people who donate extravagantly or give generously for the pat on the back. And what I would say is, if you're not willing to give privately,
come on,
then it's a heart posture. And I think that's what finances come down to, is a heart posture. And it's something you talked about, by the way. All of these things are finite. So the US dollar, finite.
Come on.
I mean, it is not going to be around forever. I don't know if that blows people's minds or not, or some people are eye rolling right now, but it's not going to be the go-to currency forever. Most currencies within the last 600 years haven't made it longer than, now we're getting into like one of my hobbies and things, looking at financial history, but haven't made it a lot longer than about 120 years, give or take. And the US dollar, in terms of dominance, like they've been around, but in terms of being the world's reserve currency, most currencies, you're looking at about 100 to 120 years. And it's like a regime change. This country's more powerful.
Yeah.
At one point, Persia their currency was about 2,000 years that it was the world reserve currency because their empire just lasted longer. And so if you think you're in a spot where nothing can happen, but you're not trusting God, something can happen.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is I could lose every dollar, but I still trust God with my circumstances.
Yeah.
I still want to have the heart of Job. And for those that don't know what we're talking about, read the book of Job, check it out. By the way, I didn't realize this. Job might be the earliest written book of the Bible. I learned that recently, that it might have even been before Genesis that the story of Job was written down. Anyways, fun fact on the church podcast.
Okay.
So to me, it's all about heart posture.
Yeah.
And I think there have been times in my life for sure where I had the wrong heart posture, where I thought there's no way God's putting it on my heart to buy this lady a Slurpee behind me at 7-Eleven. And this is a specific story. God put it on my heart to buy it, and I talked God out of it, I would say. And so I got home to my wife, Delia, who loves me and is gracious to me, but always sets me straight. And I said, hey, I just need to tell you something. I felt like God told me to buy the Slurpee for the person behind me, and I didn't, because early in our marriage, there was times we were near zero in our bank account or at negative. Like there was times where we went negative for a few days, you know, those kind of things. And I didn't do it. And Delia looked at me and said, do you think that I'm going to be more upset that we spent some money on a Slurpee that we maybe didn't have, or that you ignored God when he said do something? And it just hit me super hard. And so from that point in our marriage forward, I, in my life, have tried to work to be generous. And when God says move, even if it doesn't make financial sense, I do my best to move.
Yeah.
I do my best to get going, get up and get going.
Keep going.
And so in terms of being a good steward for my money, I have done the research, done some time, made mistakes. But actually, so we talked about earlier in the pod, that's why I invest in Bitcoin.
Come on.
And I know this is going to sound, I don't mean for it to sound pseudo-sacrilegious. Like Jesus is the most important thing in your life. But I think if people do these two things, it will change mindset, heart posture, all those things. I think loving Jesus, understanding him, getting to know him, having a relationship with him, and then buying Bitcoin, those two things have given me the most peace.
Okay.
That I could imagine.
Okay.
So that's my advice. I mean, listen, if you're a student in my class at Chowan University where I teach, you know this already. That's my mantra.
What's up?
You need to love Jesus, but then second, you need to buy Bitcoin, because I think Jesus will save your soul. He will save your heart. He will save your peace, your patience. He's going to bring you all the fruits of the Spirit, but Bitcoin will save your wallet.
That's good. That's good.
So
we're gonna put a nail right here for a minute, just because I got some questions.
Perfect.
For everybody out there, me and Jason are great friends. Jason introduced me. I think everybody's heard of Bitcoin. Jason,
I imagine at this point, yeah.
Jason really has unpacked Bitcoin for me. I had a lot of questions, and unless you have done some deep research and you want to do it, like, you really won't understand Bitcoin. So if you don't understand Bitcoin, you're like, what is this?
Why are these guys crazy and talking about this crazy thing on this pod?
Jason has done some heavy research, and he's done some personal investment that when we first talking about it, I was like, ooh, you're making me a little uncomfortable. But if you believe, like, if you've done the research and you're like, because in today's age, we're just like the dollar is the world standard. Yeah. And I'm a metals guy, right? So I always was like, man, the dollar's not backed by gold, so I'm gonna buy gold, I'm gonna buy silver, and I want to have the physical. So if it all goes bad, I still got the physical. But over the years, even precious metals have just declined in value with the new age ways to recreate rare things in labs. Or synthetic
Talking
things.
About diamonds, right?
Yeah. The synthetic things are much better than the precious metals. And so just being a good steward of the things you have, Jason, explain to us what makes Bitcoin different than other cryptocurrency, and kind of what is cryptocurrency for those who don't know.
Sure. So I'll start at the beginning. So 2008, a lot of people, most people remember, if you're an adult that lived through it for sure, you remember the great financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2008, basically a bunch of banks were over leveraged. They over loaned out money for people to get home mortgages and things like that, home loans, where they knew based on credit histories and things that these people would not be able to pay it back. But it was an environment where the government was backing those plays up so that money could start moving and flowing. Okay. And so what happened was there was no incentive for these mortgage companies or these banks to stop lending. And what happened is it basically revealed chinks in the armor of the American financial system. And when it got too bad, the banks had to be bailed out by the US government. But before that, everything collapsed, because when you're not a good steward of your money, whether you're the US government or a normal person, you're going to find these fissures, these cracks in your financial plans that you're not going to be able to stick your finger in the dam and make it stop spitting water at you, right? There's going to be more cracks and you're not going to know what to do. So then there was a group, and I, the estimation of people is that it was a group, because the odds that it's one person are pretty low based on the complexity of Bitcoin. But there was a group of cryptographers that coined the name Satoshi Nakamoto, which in Japanese means central intelligence, which many people think was like a kind of stab at the US government or many governments for doing bank bailouts. And in fact, and I'll get into blockchain technology in a minute, but in the first block that was put out on the Bitcoin blockchain, I believe it was the first block, there's a little piece of script and there was a headline pulled from an English newspaper that said Chancellor bails out banks again, something along those lines. And so it really revealed the intention of this group was, let's build a money that is outside of government control, that we can transact with, that they cannot manipulate. Because I don't know if everybody knows this. You will be told kind of an infinite number of reasons. You'll be given hundreds of reasons why inflation occurs.
Okay.
But the real reason that inflation occurs is governments print money. That's why. So if you think of your house, your parents bought a house in 1970, 1980, and it cost 80 grand. And now it's worth like 500,000.
Yep.
Well, the house is older, and whether you've done improvements to it or not, to go from 80,000 to 500,000 and the house hasn't changed sizes, it hasn't done this miraculous shift in either geography or the physics of the house, right? Barring some miracle, the house isn't worth more.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't pay more for an older car. So what is it about houses? Well, houses maintain their value as a percentage of the money printed. So the higher inflation goes, you feel more wealthy because you own this house that you bought for low, except the challenge is cheeseburgers went from 10 cents to $3. So now everything in your life costs more when it should cost less. We're in an inflationary system, not a deflationary system. But with the amount of technology we have, things should be deflationary. Let me give you one more example. Shoes, cars, things that are mass produced on an assembly line. Why, in real terms, like actual terms, would a car cost $30,000 today when it cost, $300 in 1910? Because in theory, they are easier to make now.
They're easier to make now. Yeah.
So then
why do they cost more?
Are you telling me, yeah, right. Like what's the difference? It's the amount of money printed. That's the percent that has been dictated that you spend on that car, give or take.
Yeah.
And different companies can name their prices. I know there's semantics here, but that's the general idea. So this group, Satoshi Nakamoto, decided we're going to make a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And we're just going to call it Bitcoin because it's a fun name. Like you could call Bitcoin anything. And so it was the first cryptocurrency that was tried. And you asked me, what's the difference? This is the most simplest version I can give. And I promise you this is true. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. Everything else was trying to copy its success. The difference between Bitcoin and those others, There is no central power
Okay.
that controls or dictates what happens to Bitcoin, because Satoshi Nakamoto in those early Bitcoin forums in about I think it was October of 2010. Sorry about the history lesson if the dates are wrong, but at some point around there, Satoshi Nakamoto posted on a forum, "We're leaving Bitcoin now. It's yours." And that was the last anybody ever heard of that group or that person. And they released the source code. So now Bitcoin Core code is available to anyone that wants it. Fun fact, Warren, you and I could start a new Bitcoin. We'd have to call it something different.
Yeah.
And then people would have to decide whether they join the network or not. And you said you liked holding physical gold. So for those people that like physical things, how about this? There is a physical computer network that over the last 15 years of Bitcoin's life has established itself to be the most powerful network of computers on Earth. There is no network of computers that is bigger or more powerful.
Wow.
It produces so much electricity that cities can use it to balance their grids. But that's the thing, is because it's so powerful, no one person can make changes to it. And every other cryptocurrency from Ethereum on down, there is at least one or a small group of people that can make arbitrary changes whenever they want. So those things, while they may get you US dollars and shift them and change them, they're not going to revolutionize the world like Bitcoin will. And so when I put my money in something, I want to be the best steward possible, like we talked about before. And the grandfather that I mentioned before that learned about stocks, he taught me how to do stocks. And if I'm being honest, I saw all these opportunities in these other cryptocurrencies because they were worth less money in like 2020, 2021.
Yep.
I invested a bunch and lost a bunch in cryptocurrency, and I couldn't understand why, because I'm so smart. I thought I knew all of it. I looked at the trends. I looked at all these kind of offerings that these cryptocurrencies, they were going to make social media networks. They were going to make cryptocurrency exclusive games that were going to make you more cryptocurrency. But I never stopped to ask myself, if I'm making a return on a stock, well, I know that company is producing iPhones because I buy Apple stock.
Yeah.
As more people buy iPhones, I get more. Well, these cryptocurrencies were promising all these returns just for saying, I'll stake. And what that meant was I'll put my cryptocurrency aside so you guys can hold it and you'll give me more. It's basically like a treasury bond with the US government.
Yeah.
Well, like, where are they getting that money from? They're not producing anything of value.
Yeah.
So where are they getting, and if this helps people that are listening, don't think of it as producing money. Think of it as producing value. So in order to get more value from something you hold off on, that thing has to produce more value along the way. Well, these cryptocurrencies, like, it was just a few people promising things they weren't delivering on. So where was the value coming from? They were fictionalizing it by electronically making more. They were inflating, just like the US government inflates their money. Yeah. So that's why Bitcoin is different, is because there's no one group of people that can make changes. It is an unhackable computer network. So Bitcoin essentially is money that no one can steal from you and no one can change the value of arbitrarily on their own. There is no central power, which in an interesting way, again, this is where I avoid saying it sometimes because it sounds sacrilegious or something, but seeing Jesus and how revolutionary he was and wanting to be different versus other religious leaders or even the Pharisees at the time, that kind of helped me mentally, for me, having inroads into Bitcoin. Like, oh, this thing is revolutionary. This thing came to actually help people where all these others are kind of attacking or manipulating or using goodwill and hope to trick you. Bitcoin just does what it does. So anyway, I can get deeper into the technologies if you want, but that's kind of where the illumination came for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we've got kind of a foundation of what Bitcoin is, right? I'm going to ask you this is the question that I think I first kind of was like, okay, so what's going to make Bitcoin valuable going forward? We already know it's an unhackable network. It can't be changed. So how is this value going to keep pace with current inflation? And how was Bitcoin going to operate in this kind of like, what's a roadmap ahead for Bitcoin? Why
Sure.
Why have you personally kind of like invested, and why do you kind of like disciple people? That's just kind of like show people and teach people like, hey, you might want to pay attention to what's happening here, based on what we're seeing happening with the U.S. dollar. What do you see Bitcoin doing in the future?
So the difference between Bitcoin and everything else is actually enforceable, protected scarcity. So gold, as precious as gold is, its value is only in its scarcity. And I think it was in 2021, some year like that. It was either 21, 22, somewhere. They mined as much gold as they had ever mined from the previous like 1840s to 2021. So gold is not as scarce as we think. In fact, you guys can look this up. NASA is making plans to go mine on asteroids. And they've found a couple asteroids that they think will have trillions of dollars of gold and precious metals and gemstone type of qualities.
Wow.
So those things we think are scarce, as technology gets better, they're not.
Got it.
The difference is the computer network that Bitcoin has creates it's kind of miraculous. We created digital scarcity. We created enforceable digital scarcity. There will only ever be 21 million. And by the way, for my Bitcoin lovers out there and maxis and whoever, I shouldn't say lover. Like, I'm not a Bitcoin lover. I just believe it is the technology that's going to change a lot of people's perspectives and change the world. There's slightly less than 21 million. It's something like 20,900,900, and somebody who's deeper in that kind of history of the technology would tell you, but roughly 21 million. It's a little less than that because that's how the math checks out.
Okay.
And what it is the value of Bitcoin is it is a ledger that cannot be changed. So you make a transaction, it goes onto a digital ledger, and every 10 minutes, that ledger is sent out to everyone that's running a Bitcoin node. Think of it like a computer that's tracking this ledger. And so maybe a computer network can hack one of the nodes, like one of those computers, and they can change the ledger. But what happens is those other nodes say, nope, we don't recognize this transaction ID. And so I've used this analogy a few times. Bitcoin is kind of like a Swiss bank account. It is an account you hold. You can spend that money anywhere it's accepted. It doesn't matter if it's in the US. In fact, El Salvador is the first country that made it legal tender. So right now you can go buy a house in El Salvador with Bitcoin.
Wow.
And you pay no capital gains. They treat it like currency. They don't treat it like an investment. And it's kind of both, which is really interesting. I mean, it has a lot of cool properties, and maybe we do a whole Bitcoin episode someday where I get into all how it's a store of value, a means of exchange, and a unit of accounting because of the ledger. So it's like the first triple point asset. And I didn't coin that phrase. It's actually Peter Dunworth that did that.
Okay.
He's awesome. Australian dude. You guys can look up his stuff. But anyway, that's some of the research I've done that helped me feel at peace about someone being able to manipulate this and take the value of what I'm holding. Like, I really think it's going to change the world because it doesn't care. I know I say this a lot, and it's funny to think about. Like, you could try things and Bitcoin doesn't care. Every 10 minutes, it produces another block on the blockchain. And that's what a Bitcoin miner is someone who's solving an equation. So those cryptographers I told you about that called themselves Satoshi Nakamoto and invented this thing, they created an equation with the difficulty adjustment. So the equation gets harder and harder and harder. So you need more and more computing power as the time goes on. And so you said holding physical gold, right? And you like it because it's physical and it feels safer because you can physically have it. Well, Bitcoin kind of is the same thing. It's just the physicality is in the electricity expenditure and in the computers that it uses. So it technically is backed by something physical as well. Most people don't know that. Whereas like these so there's other cryptocurrencies, and I don't want to poke fingers or, whatever, call people out. They're proof of stake. And all that means is you own some, so you get more, or you own some, so then you help the network. Proof of work is what Bitcoin does. You don't get any unless you expend electricity. You don't get any unless you're running a computer. And here's the crazy part. If all the other Bitcoin miners except one, just one on earth was running, it would get the block reward every 10 minutes. So a little bit of Bitcoin gets released, 6.25 Bitcoin, right? And there's a thing called the halving. Again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. every 210,000 blocks on this blockchain, these confirmations that are coming from Bitcoin miners, it's releasing Bitcoin. Well, that amount, that reward for running your computer gets cut in half every 4 years. And what that does is make sure there's incentive to keep doing it, right? Because if all the Bitcoin is already out there, the miners would have had no incentive to run. So it's really a beautiful protocol, Bitcoin is. So for me personally, and I have family members that have done this, and as someone who's invested in Bitcoin, this is kind of brave, because I think in the future, admitting that you own Bitcoin could become a controversial thing. But I just want to be open and honest with people. And if it helps even just one person feel more confident, feel free to, by the way, reach out to us, comment on these things, ask us questions. But I have family members and myself, 100% of our retirement holdings are in Bitcoin.
Wow.
Not 99%, not 90%. So there's something I say to my students, and something I would say to you if you're listening to this pod, and you, Warren. I mean, I know you're like this. I know you're a man of conviction, but would you believe what you believe if no one else believed it?
Ooh.
Like when you believe in things, do you believe in them?
Do you believe? Yeah.
Or do you believe in them because other people?
Because other people have verified them. Yeah.
Right. For me, no matter what happens.
Wow.
No matter who else does.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep holding my Bitcoin.
Wow. Wow. So I got this question, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of plays off of what you just said, right? How does your faith in God help you to navigate a place like Bitcoin where people will be like, does your faith play a role in your ability to be able to have the discernment to say, yeah, this is solid. Yes, I've checked this out. Yes, we're going to go this direction. Even though the world's saying this direction, I'm going to go this direction because I feel my peace about my finances belongs in God. And therefore, right? Therefore, I can believe what I believe, regardless if people are like, oh, he's crazy. Because I'm sure people heard you like, you're 100% in retirement. You're not diversified. You don't have a little bit of stocks, a little bit of this, a little bit of Bitcoin. You're like, I'm all in. Because for me, I'm all in on Jesus. That's it. I'm all in. Right. And so it's not like I'm like, hey, I'm 50% a Christian. I'm like, 25% this and the rest is, rainbows and unicorns. No, I'm all in. I'm all in for Jesus. He's the only way to live your life is for him, through the word of God. And so when you say I'm all in, that for me, that just excites me. And for people who are listening, I hope it excites you because it shows the faith, And so Jason, if you can kind of just touch on that, how did you get from 0 to 100 and where did your faith come in with that?
Yeah. So I think the quickest way to answer it, the most succinct way, is to think of it as scarcity.
Come on.
So what does, or how many things exist that are actually scarce? Mm-hmm. And I would argue, so there are a lot of Bitcoiners that say time, right? Your life, you have one chance, and then Bitcoin, that's it.
Yeah. I
would say 3 things. And the thing that kind of connected the dots for me in some way was I have one life. Mm-hmm. So I need to make the right choices. I have to sit on podcasts with Warren Brown and be a part of this because it's amazing. And like, I can spend my time any way I want, but guess what? I can't have back is this last hour.
Yeah.
I can't redo it. So I'm thankful to be spending it this way.
Yeah.
So every choice I make, you have one life.
Yeah.
Also, there's one commodity that's scarce. It's Bitcoin. You'll never have more than 21 million. If you buy a piece of that network, all value tends to go to one currency, tends to go to one thing, like the US dollar is doing that now. That's going to be Bitcoin. And so I'm willing to look a little crazy in how I spend my money and my time investing if it means a reward in the end.
Wow.
And it's going to. I believe that it will.
Wow.
And in the same way, I'm willing to look a little crazy with my faith.
Come on.
Because I believe in the scarcity of one with Jesus.
Let's go.
So he's it. And I love you if you're listening to this, but I got to tell you, Buddhism won't get you there. Hinduism's not going to get you there. Meditating hard, doing yoga, trusting money, trusting friends, trusting people, being a good person, helping old ladies across the street. None of that is scarce. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father but through me. And so Jesus saying that helped me better understand scarcity. And so that's the thing that kind of drives everyone. Like, wow. I don't know if people know this. When you dump money in your 401k, there's stocks and there's a limited amount of stock. So you have Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook. And by the way, just so I have it said on the pod so people aren't listening like, well, this guy, he doesn't know anything about all this stuff. I understand a 60-40 portfolio. I understand 60% stocks, 40% treasury bonds. I understand what an evenly balanced, divisible portfolio that, you know, you diversify in your 401k and you make sure that you own a little bit of real estate. You own a little bit of this. The difference is, I'll put it to you like this. The difference is I would never trade a gold bar that I own for seashells. And you're thinking, well, what do you mean seashells? Well, seashells were at some point the most valuable currency on earth. And then it changed to gold when we realized scarcity was important, right? Durability was important. Well, there's nothing more scarce or durable than Bitcoin. So I'm not going to trade my Bitcoin for your seashells.
Come on.
And right now, the US dollar is operating like seashells. They're going to print more. People are going to wonder why things cost more. Mm-hmm. They're going to listen to MSNBC, CNN, whoever the talking head is on Fox. They're going to listen to these people and say inflation is because of this politician on this side, or this politician on the other side, or this war, or man, oil costs this because Saudi Arabia did.
Yeah.
Inflation is because the units of measure of value, the dollar in our case, are more there's a higher quantity. Mm-hmm. So then everything is divided by that quantity. Well, the nice thing about Bitcoin is you can divide everything by 21 million. Because right now, I don't know how many US dollars there are in circulation, but you can divide everything by that number and then they print more. So then you're dividing everything by a bigger number. So it's infinity divided by infinity, which is, I think, one or so. I mean, it's just like this, you can just go on forever.
Yep.
You can do this math forever. But imagine being able to divide all value on earth by 21 million and you will see the future that is Bitcoin. And imagine then having Bitcoin, passing it to your kids and going to heaven because you believed in the other scarce asset, which was Jesus and a relationship with him.
Come on.
That's how I got where I'm at.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Jason, you've dropped some nuggets on us today. There's a lot to consider in what we've been talking about today. I'm in. And I hope that you guys are like, if you're not in, do the research for yourself. Like, even as we minister, we talk about God, don't take our word for it, right? Let's be real, right? Let's be real.
Yeah.
Do the research. Try God for yourself. Also, as we talk about finances and tools that we use for the future, do the research. Bitcoin deserves you taking a look and saying, hey, man, it must be something. What is what he's saying is true. Look into it for yourself. Here's what I want you kind of take away from what we've talked about today. Number one, keep God first place in your life, period. Don't put money above God because he
100%.
He is God over everything. And also recognize that God has given you the ability to make free choice. And this information, it's not a mistake that you tuned in. It's not a mistake that you're here. So also hear what God is saying to you through the words that we've given you today. And so with that, we're so grateful that you tuned in. Jason, I'm going to ask you to pray us out because I believe in the power that God has he's used you to speak into my life and many of our friends. And I'm so grateful that you are sharing this with us because you could just keep all this information to yourself. And we want you guys to be blessed and we want to be real with you guys. We're in a world where the financial systems of the world are falling apart. And here comes this thing out of nowhere, right? And crazy faith. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes being being seen as the crazy one.
Come on.
And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Man, God, I just thank you so much for today's pod. I thank you for ears that are open, minds that are open to what we're saying, to the information we presented. I thank you for hopefully giving me the words to say that help illuminate some of these things for people and prompt more conversations and more research, and just more time with you first, reading the Bible, and then more time considering how finances and tithing and being a blessing to others through offering and giving, how those things impact everything. Every single person, every single voice that hears me right now, bring that person peace, bring them financial peace, bring them wisdom in their finances, and bring them just the energy and time to spend learning how you can impact their lives through finances and through a relationship with you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Woo.
Let's go.
So good, man. So good. All right, Warren, man. Episode 3 is a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Love you, buddy. We'll see you guys on the next one.
See you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in.
All right.